A broke nurse was forced to marry a dying billionaire, but when he miraculously survived, he fell deeply in love with her. The hospital break room was dimly lit, the overhead fluorescent light flickering faintly. Ava sat hunched in a worn plastic chair, phone pressed tightly to her ear. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. The graveyard shift was nearly over, but her body felt like it had been days since she'd last slept. "Did the doctor say anything new?" Ava whispered. On the other end, her younger sister Lily's voice was weak. "They said I need the transplant soon, or there won't be much time left." Ava closed her eyes, her chest tightening. "I'm trying, Lily. I promise I'm trying. The insurance still hasn't approved it. Mom's old debts are blocking the process. They said if we pay at least half up front—" "I know," Ava said quickly, not wanting her sister to feel guilty. "Don't worry about it, just rest, okay?" But when the call ended, she didn't move. Her hands trembled. She was drowning in bills, working double shifts at the hospital and still falling short. There was no one to ask for help, no miracle on the horizon. Unbeknownst to Ava, someone had overheard everything. Vivian Carter stood just beyond the doorway, elegantly dressed in a beige trench coat, her eyes sharp beneath perfectly styled hair. She had come to the hospital to check on her son Nathan, who'd been recovering from minor surgery. But what she heard in that break room changed her plans entirely. Minutes later, a nurse tapped Ava on the shoulder. "Excuse me, Miss Bennett. Mrs. Vivian Carter would like to see you in the private lounge." Ava blinked in surprise. "Mrs. Carter? The Carter Foundation?" The nurse nodded. She insisted. Still confused, Ava followed her down the hall to an exclusive VIP suite. Inside, Vivian sat with a cup of tea in hand, legs crossed elegantly. "Please, sit," she said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Ava sat on the edge of the armchair, uncertain. "I happened to overhear your phone call," Vivian began smoothly. "I hope you don't mind." Ava's cheeks flushed. "I didn't mean to. No need to apologize. I understand what it's like to be desperate." She sipped her tea, studying Ava over the rim. "Which is why I believe we might be able to help each other." Ava's brow furrowed. "Help? Each other?" Vivian leaned forward. "You know who Ethan Carter is, don't you?" "Of course," Ava said. He's in the ICU. I'm on the team caring for him." Vivian nodded. "He's also my late husband's grandson. According to his will, Ethan must be legally married before his 30th birthday to inherit the majority of the Carter estate. That birthday is in 3 weeks." Ava stared at her. Vivian smiled. "If Ethan isn't married by then, the estate transfers to me and my son Nathan." She let the words hang for a moment. "I'm offering you a deal," she continued. "Marry Ethan. Legally, on paper only. He's unconscious. He'll never know. The lawyers will take care of everything. In return, I'll pay for your sister's transplant and offer you a life of comfort. You'll be set for years to come." Ava's breath caught. "You want me to marry a man in a coma?" "It's just a signature," Vivian said coolly. "A contract, nothing more. And you would save your sister's life." Ava stood, her heart pounding. I need time to think." "Of course," Vivian replied, still smiling. "But remember, your sister doesn't have much time left, and this offer doesn't stay on the table forever." That night, Ava stood beside Ethan's hospital bed, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest beneath the sterile white sheets. His face was calm, almost peaceful. Nothing like the storm raging inside her. She reached out, gently adjusting the IV line, then paused. "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice shaking. "I don't know who you are, but I'm about to change both our lives forever. I hope someday, if there is a someday, you'll understand." Tears welled in her eyes as she gently touched his hand. "If there's another life, please forgive me." 3 days later, the wedding took place in Ethan's private hospital room. A priest was brought in. 2 lawyers witnessed the ceremony. Vivian stood off to the side, overseeing everything with practiced detachment. Ava wore a pale dress that someone had chosen for her. She couldn't remember saying the vows. Her voice had trembled when she signed the marriage certificate. but once the ink dried, it was done. She was now Ava Bennett Carter, wife of Ethan Carter, the comatose heir to $1 billion fortune. The next day, Lily was transferred to a private hospital. Surgery was scheduled. Bills were cleared. The relief nearly broke Ava in half. But the price was just beginning. She was moved to Ethan's estate to maintain appearances and uphold the legitimacy of the marriage. A private wing was assigned to her. Staff kept their distance. Her movements were watched. She wasn't allowed to access Ethan's finances or even leave the estate without permission. It was a beautiful prison, and in that house of marble silence, Ava began a double life, wife on paper, caregiver in secret. Every night she returned to Ethan's bedside in the private in-home medical room, tending to him as quietly as ever. Only now, every touch felt like a lie, and every moment a countdown. The Carter estate was grander than anything Ava had ever seen. Marble floors stretched into infinity, chandeliers glittered like constellations, and every room smelled faintly of roses and cold detachment. But the beauty felt hollow, like a museum curated to perfection, yet utterly lifeless. After the quiet hospital wedding, Ava was moved into a private wing of the estate, her quarters elegant but guarded. She was introduced to the housekeeper, the driver, the security staff, all polite, all carefully watching. Vivian Carter maintained her role with polished grace. She greeted Ava each morning with smiles, checked in on Lily's surgery with subtle concern, and referred to Ava as my daughter-in-law when speaking to staff. But Ava could sense the undercurrent, calculated, rehearsed. Nothing about Vivian felt maternal or genuine. Still, Ava kept her head down. She took comfort in knowing Lily was recovering. That alone made everything worth it. At least, that's what she told herself. Each night, Ava visited Ethan's in-home care suite. It had been recreated almost identically to his hospital room. Monitors, IV stands, oxygen lines, all maintained by a rotating team of private nurses. But when no one was around, Ava took over. She adjusted his pillow, read aloud to him, told him how Lily was doing. I know you probably can't hear me, she murmured one evening, brushing a stray hair from his forehead. But in case you can, thank you. Your name gave my sister a second chance. Ethan didn't respond. His chest rose and fell steadily, his expression calm, unreadable. But Ava kept talking. Then came the night that shattered everything. It was nearly midnight. Ava couldn't sleep, so she made her way quietly down the hall, slipping into Ethan's room like she always did. The lights were dim, casting soft shadows across the equipment. The nurse on duty had stepped out for a break, but someone else was there, Nathan. He stood by the IV stand, syringe in hand, fiddling with the medication bag. Ava froze. Nathan turned sharply at the sound of her gasp. "What are you doing?" she asked. Voice low but firm, he smirked. "Shouldn't you be asleep, sweetheart?" She stepped forward. "What is that in your hand?" "Relax. Just giving my brother a little adjustment." Her eyes dropped to the syringe. The label on the vial was unfamiliar. "You're not a doctor," she said, moving closer. "And that's not on his chart." Nathan's smile thinned. "You're not here to question anything. You signed a contract. You got your payout." Ava's voice rose. "If you inject that into him—" "What?" he sneered. "You'll stop me? You're just the charity case wife. You were brought in to serve a purpose, and now that purpose is done." He took a step toward her, eyes narrowing. "Walk away. Stay quiet, or you and your little sister might not enjoy the comfort you've been given." Ava's blood ran cold. He was threatening Lily. She backed away slowly, her fists clenched. "I won't let you hurt him." Nathan laughed softly. "He's already half dead. What difference does it make?" But Ava didn't back down. "I'll report you." "To who? My mother? The lawyers she owns? The staff who answer to us?" He leaned in. "You're in over your head." She ran out before he could say more, her heart thundering in her chest. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in the dark, staring at her phone, wondering what she could do. The contract she signed had a confidentiality clause. Any legal move could risk Lily's care. And yet, if she did nothing, Ethan could die. She was trapped. By morning, she returned to Ethan's room. The nurse was back, Nathan was gone, but Ava stayed close. She checked every dosage, questioned every shift change, never left Ethan alone again. She had married him to save her sister. Now she had to protect him, to save herself. The morning Ethan Carter opened his eyes, time itself seemed to pause within the Carter estate. Monitors beeped in erratic rhythm. A nurse gasped, nearly dropping the clipboard in her hand. "He's awake," she cried. "Get Dr. Holloway, now!" Footsteps thundered down the hall as more staff flooded into the room. A swirl of white coats surrounded the bed, but none of them could quite believe what they were seeing. Ethan's fingers had twitched once, then again. His eyelids fluttered open, slowly, like heavy curtains being pulled back on a long-forgotten stage. His lips parted, his chest heaved, and with a deep, labored breath he sat up, groggy and disoriented. The on-call physician, Dr. Holloway, rushed in just as the rest of the room froze. "Mr. Carter," he said cautiously, breathless from disbelief. "Can you hear me?" Ethan blinked, his pupils slowly adjusting to the morning light spilling through the tall windows. His voice came out raspy, barely audible. "Where am I?" "You're home, sir, at the estate. You've been in a medically induced coma for 6 months. There was an accident. A car crash." Ethan's brows furrowed as he tried to piece together the fragmented echoes in his head. 6 months? The doctor nodded solemnly. "Yes. We didn't expect this. Your recovery is, well, it's a miracle." As nurses checked his vitals and carefully adjusted his IV lines, the double doors of the suite opened again. A woman's voice, smooth and trembling with forced emotion, cut through the hum of machines. "Oh, Ethan, thank God." Vivian Carter entered, perfectly composed in a soft gray silk blouse, her hair immaculately styled, her makeup flawless. She moved toward the bed, her heels clicking faintly against the marble floor. Ethan's gaze turned to her, his expression hardening. "Where's Nathan?" Vivian hesitated, just a moment too long. "He's resting. He's been helping manage the company while you were recovering." Ethan said nothing, but something shifted in his eyes. Suspicion, buried deep beneath fatigue. Then another voice, soft, nervous, familiar, though he couldn't place it. I brought your medication," the voice said gently. He turned. At the door stood a young woman in pale blue scrubs, holding a tray with a glass of water and a small cup of pills. Her hand trembled slightly, her eyes wide and stunned, locked with his. You're really awake," she whispered. Ethan stared at her, confusion tightening his face. "Who are you?" The entire room stilled. Vivian, never missing a beat, stepped in smoothly. "Darling, this is Ava, your wife." The air seemed to vanish from Ethan's lungs. "My what?" Ava's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Her throat burned with all the words she didn't know how to say. Vivian offered a diplomatic smile. "It was necessary for legal reasons. You married while unconscious. A technicality really, but perfectly valid in court. There's documentation." Ethan turned his gaze back to Ava, his face now like carved ice. The medical staff, sensing something volatile about to ignite, quietly excused themselves. The door clicked shut. The silence that followed was heavy. "So let me guess," Ethan said, his voice flat but sharp. "You were handpicked by my loving stepmother to help manage the family fortune while I played Sleeping Beauty?" Ava flinched at the venom in his tone. "It's not like that. I didn't what?" he snapped. "Didn't move into my home? Didn't sign the marriage license? Didn't pretend to play Florence Nightingale while probably shopping with my credit card?" "I never took anything," she said quickly. "I was just trying to help." He let out a cold laugh. "Don't insult me. I didn't ask for this," Ava said, her voice cracking. "Your stepmother made me an offer. My sister was dying. I didn't see another way." He narrowed his eyes. "Of course. Poor, desperate nurse. My fortune for your compassion. Convenient." "You don't know me," she said softly. "And I don't care to," he shot back. "Whatever arrangement you made with Vivian ends now. The marriage, the farce, All of it. She tried one last time. Just let me explain. I don't want an explanation. I want you gone, before I call security. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of him. Without another word, she turned and left, her steps shaky but swift. Back in the guest room, her temporary prison turned temporary refuge, Ava packed in silence. A duffel bag, a folded sweater, a few personal items. That was all she'd brought. Before she left, she sat down and wrote a letter. It was short, honest, raw. She placed it on his nightstand. Then, with one last glance at the room that had never truly been hers, she walked out. The letter. Ethan, you don't know me, but I've been here, every night, not for your name or your money, because someone had to be. Nathan tried to poison your IV, twice. I stopped him. I stayed, not because I loved you, at least not then, but because I couldn't walk away and let you die for someone else's greed. I know I was part of a lie, but I never lied when I spoke to you, not even when I thought you'd never hear me. Every cent I took went to save my sister's life, not a dollar for myself. I'm sorry you hate me. I only ever wanted to do the right thing. Goodbye, Ethan. Ava. The next morning, Ethan sat in silence, her letter trembling in his hand, and for the first time since waking, he wasn't angry. He was ashamed, because the stranger he had just cast out had been the only person fighting for him all along. The letter lay unopened on the edge of the nightstand, Ethan's name written in soft, looping script. For hours he ignored it, convinced it was another attempt at manipulation. But in the stillness of the night, when the walls felt too quiet and his mind refused to rest, he picked it up. He read it once, then again. Each word chipped away at the icy certainty he had clung to since waking. Ava's tone wasn't polished or pleading. It was raw, unfiltered, too honest to be faked. She had stopped Nathan? Twice? Ethan narrowed his eyes. He called for his assistant the next morning. I want security footage, he ordered. Every video feed from my room while I was comatose. Start from 4 months ago. Sir, some of the files were archived when you moved back from the hospital to home care. Unarchived them. Later that day, Ethan sat in front of a monitor, fast-forwarding through hours of grainy black and white footage. Most nights were quiet, but then, on one recording from nearly 2 months ago, the screen flickered with movement. He saw Nathan and Ava. Nathan stood over Ethan's IV, syringe in hand. Ava stormed in, yanked it from him, and pushed him back. Ethan paused the footage, heart racing. His hand trembled as he clicked through more files. Over and over again, the same pattern. Ava entering the room alone at night, checking the machines, whispering softly as if Ethan could hear her, watching over him. No cameras had audio, but her face spoke volumes. She had cared. He clenched his jaw. He had thrown her out without hearing the full story. Fury bubbled up, not at her, but at Vivian, at Nathan, at himself for being so blind. And then the old questions returned, sharper than ever. Why was I in that car alone? Why were my brakes unresponsive? Why did no one ever find the vehicle that ran the red light? That night, Ethan contacted a private investigator, someone outside the Carter family's payroll. I want every detail about the accident, he said. Every angle, every lead that was dropped. And start with Nathan. The man nodded. Already on it. Meanwhile, Ava had quietly returned to her old life, or what was left of it. She'd taken a nursing position at a small community clinic on the outskirts of town, far from luxury, but rich in meaning. She cared for elderly patients, young mothers, injured workers, people who reminded her why she'd become a nurse in the first place. Her sister Lily was still recovering from surgery, staying in a nearby apartment. Her health was improving every day. Ava never spoke about the Carter estate, never mentioned Ethan. To the world, it had been a temporary position she'd left behind, a chapter closed, but inside, she couldn't forget. Sometimes she caught herself glancing at the door, half expecting him to walk through. Other nights, she dreamt of his voice, not the one filled with rage, but the quiet one she used to imagine when reading to him in the dark. She missed him, even if he had never really known her, even if their marriage had been a lie. Still, she had loved him. Back at the estate, The pieces were falling into place. The investigator returned with findings that chilled Ethan to the core. The brake line on your car was cut, Mr. Carter, and the surveillance footage from the garage where it should have been caught was erased manually. Ethan's eyes hardened. Nathan, or someone working for him, but he had the motive and access. Ethan nodded, gripping the arms of his chair. And Ava? She has no ties to Nathan. In fact, she reported him at the hospital twice, but the complaints were lost in process. And the payments she received from the Carter Foundation, all documented. All spent on her sister's medical bills, not a cent touched for herself. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had accused her of being a gold digger. In reality, she had risked everything to protect him, and now she was gone, but not for long. The moment Ethan Carter stepped out of his black SUV, the quiet charm of the small clinic felt like another world. No marble floors, no polished brass, just peeling paint, wilted flowers in the windows, and the scent of antiseptic clinging to the breeze. He clutched a bouquet in one hand, sunflowers and white lilies, her favorites, according to the nurse who hesitantly agreed to tell him where Ava was working. He hadn't slept much in days, not since the truth unraveled. Not since the footage, the reports, the haunting realization that she had been the only one protecting him while everyone else circled like vultures. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The receptionist looked up in mild surprise. "Can I help you? I'm here to see Ava Bennett." The woman blinked, recognizing the name. "She's with a patient. I'll wait." Moments later, Ava emerged from the hallway, wiping her hands with a towel. She looked tired, but in a different way than before. Lighter, almost peaceful, until she saw him. Her steps slowed. Her gaze hardened. "Thank you, and Ava." There was a silence, thick with everything they hadn't said. "I brought you something," he said, awkwardly holding up the flowers. She looked at them for a moment before turning away. "You didn't have to come." "I did," he said gently. "To say thank you, and to say I'm sorry." "I don't need your gratitude." "Then take my help." He stepped forward. "I can make sure you never have to worry about money again. For you, for Lily. I owe you." "Stop," she said, voice sharper than he expected. He froze. "You don't owe me anything, Ethan." He lowered the bouquet slowly. "I was wrong about you." "Yes," she said, eyes glassy. "You were. But you didn't just doubt me. You humiliated me. You made me feel like I was nothing. I was scared. Angry. I thought you were part of their game. And I was," she said bitterly. "I was a pawn. But I never lied to you. I never wanted your money. I don't even know anymore." Her voice cracked, and she turned away. "I thought maybe," she continued, quieter now, "if you knew the truth, if you understood, you might care." "I do," he said quickly. She shook her head. "You care now because you feel guilty, because you want to fix it." "No," he said firmly, "because I see you now, the real you. And I care about that woman." She turned, finally meeting his eyes. Her expression was unreadable. "I don't want your money, Ethan," she said softly. "I don't want a mansion or a title or a name. What do you want?" Her answer came like a whisper and a thunderclap all at once. "I wanted to be loved," she said. "And somewhere along the way, I made the mistake of loving you." The words landed like a blow. Ethan's mouth opened, but nothing came. "I'm sorry," she said, brushing past him, "but I'm not a debt you can repay, and I'm not your redemption story." She disappeared down the hall, leaving him alone in the quiet clinic, the bouquet still in his hand. The next day, Ava noticed something strange. The clinic's old front door had been repaired. New hinges, fresh paint. By the end of the week, the plumbing that had leaked for months suddenly worked perfectly. Anonymous donations of supplies began arriving. Her patients received medication they couldn't previously afford. When she asked the clinic manager where it all came from, he just shrugged. "No name, just a donor who cares." And sometimes, when she looked out the window, she saw a black SUV parked across the street. Not always, but often enough. He never came in again. He just watched. Quiet, patient, waiting. The boardroom of Carter Enterprises was bathed in morning light, the glass walls revealing a sweeping view of the city skyline. Around the long mahogany table sat the most powerful executives in the company, men and women who had once assumed Ethan Carter would never wake up, let alone walk into this room again. But here he was, standing tall, eyes sharp, demeanor composed. He tapped a file on the table in front of him, the leather folder bearing the Carter family seal. "Thank you all for joining me today. I know this was a last-minute meeting, but I assure you it's important." At the far end of the table sat Vivian Carter and her son Nathan, both feigning calm, though a flicker of unease crossed their faces. Ethan continued, "While I was recovering from my accident, some interesting things came to light. Things that go far beyond family disputes." He opened the folder and passed around printed documents, medical records, pharmacy logs, video stills from security footage, and statements from whistleblowers. "What you're looking at," he said, "is evidence that during my coma, my IV was tampered with. Twice." A low murmur spread around the table. "My brother," Ethan said, turning toward Nathan, "was caught on camera attempting to alter my medication. He used unprescribed substances. If Ava, my wife, hadn't intervened, I would be dead." Nathan laughed nervously. "You can't be serious. That's not—" "I have footage," Ethan snapped, voice hard. "I also have signed statements from 2 nurses who were paid off to look the other way, and digital traces showing a deliberate deletion of garage surveillance the night of my car accident." He turned slowly to Vivian. "The car's brake line was cut, the footage proving it was wiped, and the person who ordered it," he looked her directly in the eyes, "sat in this room, pretending to mourn me." Vivian's smile faltered. "You're bluffing," Nathan hissed. Ethan pulled out one last folder. "This is a report from a third-party investigator. Names, bank transfers, dates, all of it. Enough for federal charges." The room fell into stunned silence. A board member finally spoke. "Ethan, what do you plan to do?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I'm pressing charges," he said, "against both Vivian and Nathan for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Effective immediately, their access to company resources and assets is revoked." Security guards entered the room as if on cue. Vivian stood in disbelief while Nathan turned pale. "You're throwing away your family?" Vivian snapped. "You threw away your soul," Ethan replied coldly. "I'm just cutting the rot." The guards escorted them out, silence trailing in their wake. Once the room settled, Ethan addressed the board again. "One more thing," he said. He opened a final document, signed and notarized. "I'm transferring the Carter Family Trust, every cent of it, into a new foundation, the Ava Grace Foundation, named after the woman who saved my life when no one else even cared if I lived." Gasps filled the room. "I'll retain controlling shares of Carter Enterprises," he added, "but the profits from the trust will now fund health care for underserved communities and patients who can't afford life-saving treatment." He looked up, meeting every gaze with quiet conviction. "I was born into privilege. I almost died because of it. I don't intend to waste my second chance." There was nothing more to say, and as Ethan left the boardroom, the city stretching out before him, he felt something he hadn't in years. Clarity. He had destroyed the ones who tried to kill him. Now he just had to win back the one who saved him. The sun was just beginning to set, casting a golden hue over the quiet neighborhood where Ava now lived. She stood on the porch, watering the plants that lined the small railing, her mind lost in thought. She didn't hear the car pull up, didn't see him step onto the sidewalk, but when she looked up, he was there. Ethan. No suit, no entourage, just him in a simple sweater and jeans, holding something behind his back. Ava froze, the watering can trembling slightly in her grip. He walked up the steps slowly, stopping just in front of her. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me," he said softly. "I wasn't sure I did either," she replied honestly. He smiled, small, hesitant. Then he reached behind him and pulled out a small velvet box. Ava's breath caught, but before she could say anything, he dropped to one knee. "No lawyers, no contracts, no coma," he said, voice steady, eyes never leaving hers. "Just me, awake, alive, and completely in love with you." Her hands flew to her mouth. "The first time I married you, I didn't even know your name," he continued, emotion thickening his voice. "But this time, Ava, I want to spend the rest of my life learning everything about you. I want to wake up every morning knowing I chose you, and that you chose me, not because you had to, but because you wanted to." He opened the box. Inside was a simple ring. Elegant. Real. "I fell for you long before I understood what love really meant, but now I do. And it means this: I don't want a life without you in it." Tears welled up in Ava's eyes. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hardly hear the world around her. For a long moment, she just looked at him, this man who had once pushed her away, now offering her everything, with nothing but sincerity in his eyes. And then she dropped to her knees too, right there on the porch, and threw her arms around him. "Yes," she whispered through tears. "Yes, Ethan, I choose you." She wasn't crying because she was broken. She was crying because, for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. She wasn't needed. She was wanted, truly, deeply. And this time, she was finally home. The ocean stretched endlessly under a sky painted in soft pastels, waves gently brushing the shore as if blessing the day with quiet reverence. A year had passed, and now, beneath an archway of wildflowers by the sea, Ava walked barefoot through the sand, her white dress flowing like mist behind her. She smiled, radiant, peaceful, as she stepped toward Ethan, who waited with that familiar look in his eyes, one of awe, love, and something deeper: gratitude. This time, there were no secrets, no contracts, no hospital machines humming in the background, just the sound of the sea, the laughter of close friends, and the promise of a future they had fought for. Their hands met as the officiant spoke, but they barely heard the words. They only saw each other, felt the truth of what they'd survived, what they'd become. When the vows were exchanged, they were whispered, sacred, just for the two of them. After the ceremony, they walked along the shoreline together, hand in hand, as the sun dipped lower behind them. Ava leaned into Ethan, her head resting on his shoulder. "I still can't believe this is real," she murmured. Ethan smiled, kissing the top of her head. "Real, and only just beginning." Ava had built something beautiful in the past year, a foundation that helped underprivileged children receive medical care, inspired by her own childhood and the girl she used to be. The Ava Grace Foundation had already saved dozens of lives, and she ran it with quiet strength and relentless compassion. Ethan, though still CEO of Carter Enterprises, had stepped back from the spotlight. He traded boardroom wars for community outreach, late-night charity calls, and mornings that began with coffee and kisses instead of headlines. He had everything, but more importantly, he had Ava. As the night deepened, fairy lights twinkled above the reception tables on the beach, and soft music filled the air. They shared their first dance under the stars, barefoot in the sand, surrounded by people who had seen them at their worst, and now their best. When the music slowed, Ethan leaned down, brushing a strand of hair from Ava's face. Then he whispered in her ear, voice low and full of meaning, "I married you once while I was asleep. But today, I'm wide awake, because you, Ava, are the life I never knew I was waiting for." He smiled through tears, pressing her forehead against his, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. The past had passed, the storm had cleared, and in the arms of the man who once didn't know her name, Ava found forever. If this story moved you, if it stirred something deep in your heart and reminded you that love can rise from the most broken places, then we invite you to stay with us a little longer. Because here on Soul-Stirring Stories, we believe in second chances, in love that heals, in truths that redeem, and in the quiet, powerful moments that change everything. Ava and Ethan's journey was one of pain, sacrifice, redemption, and ultimately love that chose to stay. And if stories like this warm your soul, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next tale that touches the heart. Until then, keep believing in love, keep finding light after the storm, and remember, you are never too broken to be loved. This is Soul-Stirring Stories, where healing begins with a story.